you're the CEO today of not one, not two, but three different businesses.
Sure.
Is that a good accuracy?
It's an accurate statement.
Why wouldn't that be a good idea for me to go and just compete on price?
Competition erodes profit. And profit is what you're after here.
This episode is for men, for providers who want to know exactly what to do in the age of AI to make sure that they always have options. Today, I'm sitting down with Evan Shai. He's a multi-time founder, he's been an investor, and he's currently a multi-company CEO. He's seen what works and what doesn't work from working with dozens of companies, and he's sharing it all. How do you validate an idea for a business? What's the first step you need to take to get started with that business? Where do side hustles come into play? And what's his framework to achieve mastery in multiple areas of life? A lot of people have ideas for businesses. They talk about them, but they don't know what steps to take.
Move very, very fast to actually trying to sell the product or service. And again, you are going to learn so much from that process.
I'm stuck in this. I got a mortgage. I got car payments. I have kids now. I can't just leave. Yes, I don't love my life, but I also don't feel like I'm the one who's responsible for all of it.
There is no easy path, and probably not a path that doesn't imply some kind of sacrifice that needs to be made.
How can someone go through the process in a week using AI and $50 or $100 and go through and validate a business idea?
It ultimately comes down to money, skill, and time.
Why do you think that most men aren't making that connection?
Everything in my life ultimately is my fault, because if it is my fault, there's something I can do about it. So with entrepreneurship comes, yes, freedom, but also comes with, I'm a big advocate of entrepreneurship, both in the path of, doing it in a big way, going the venture path, or for more people, small business ownership, doing the kind of conventional entrepreneurship thing where you really are more control of your own destiny. So I am a huge advocate for that. I'm a champion of that, and I like to help a lot of people in how to do that successfully, or at least increase the odds of success. That said, it is not for everyone. And although I think that when you get there, it can certainly provide a lot of important elements of freedom and control over your own destiny that you wouldn't have otherwise, there are also a lot of consequences and, again, sacrifices that have to be made on the way there. And there's a sense of extreme ownership, I think, that comes with going down that path. I'll give you an example. So, one of the first VC-backed businesses, at least I started, it ended up, failing in a kind of a epic way. I mean, 11th hour, we had a round of financing to be closed. It was supposed to be closed. One of the investors ended up pulling out. We ran out of money, and the company ultimately had to be closed, and all of the consequences that come with that. And we tried everything. I mean, we have pivoted the business from a fitness application to an online book club application. Had some promising, interest and success, but ultimately the outcome was the outcome. And while in that 11th hour, I was trying to raise capital from investors. I'm having investor calls. I'm sitting next to my dad, who's on hospice at the time and dying from pancreatic cancer. And I'm looking at these two realities that are seemingly coming to this like really dramatic end. But I'm literally having investor calls. I'm taking team calls. Unfortunately, both didn't end well. My father ended up passing away, and a couple weeks later, the business had to be shut down. And it would have been easy to point at a lot of different things outside of myself that were the reason for those things happening. But the reality is that I made decisions that allowed the business to be in the position that it was in. I mean, I can't point at investors or the team or the industry we are competing in. I chose the investors. I chose the team. I chose where we were going to be competing in. And that might be demoralizing for some people to feel, like the sense of everything in my life ultimately is my fault, or under my control. For me, it's empowering, because if it is my fault, there's something I can do about it, right? There's aspects or inputs that I can focus on and control and doing differently. And that's been an absolute game changer for me in terms of how I view new opportunities, how I lean into increasing the probability of success in those opportunities. And yeah, so that's been super important. So with entrepreneurship comes, yes, freedom, comes a lot of fun and reward, especially when things go well, a lot of growth, of course, but also comes with very real sense of accountability, responsibility, and ownership for sure.
People that have accomplished great things and found great success all seem to share that mindset of agency and taking ownership of the wins and the losses.
Yeah.
Why do you think that most men aren't making that connection? Because if they're in a job that they don't like, that pays them well, are they not choosing to continue that and not make the change? Why do you think they think that way?
I think the reality is that it's hard to think that way. It's uncomfortable to view the bad things happening in your life, or maybe even less dramatic than that, the things that are unfulfilling in your life as a consequence of decisions that you've made. It's a lot easier to point towards other things as why things are that way. We've all had experiences that present opportunities to come to this realization. It's the reflection on those challenges or big events that have happened in our life, and being able to see that soberly as, oh, one, I could have done these things differently, and two, look how better I am for this thing of happening. That's been a thing that's been kind of just clear for me through my entrepreneurial journey. But
what would you say to the guy who's like, Evan, you don't understand, okay? I'm stuck in this. I got a mortgage. I got car payments. I have kids now. I can't just leave. Yes, I don't love my life, but I also don't feel like I'm the one who's responsible for all of it that brings us here today, for the way my life is going. These external circumstances, and I grew up here, and then I married this person, and now I have these responsibilities. Is it on them, or is it on their environment?
it's on them. Like, I mean, again, we've all had, it could be harder for this person to find their path forward. We can point to a lot of people. I mean, all you have to do is read the stories of history's greatest entrepreneurs, if you want to use that particular example. And within each of those stories, you'll find different degrees and complexities of challenges that have happened throughout their lives. And ultimately, they made really hard, incredibly challenging decisions to forge the path that they did and ultimately achieve the success that they did. And, even the Founders podcast, if you listen, it's a fantastic one. And I think will kind of, accelerate someone's appreciation for what I'm talking about here. But even just random people like Oprah's path towards success. I mean, if you just know anything about her upbringing and, the world that she was navigating to get there, it was far from an easy kind of clear trajectory, trauma-free to arrive at what she was ultimately able to achieve. Now, if she can do that, and other, single mothers out there who've been able to forge their way to success are able to do it, I have increasingly less empathy for someone who is stuck in kind of pointing towards things outside their own control as the reason to not make a change.
Are men fragile today because they have victim mentality?
I think that's one characteristic of fragility that people experience. I think a victim mentality is it's self-perpetuating, right? You end up being in this kind of positive feedback loop to where you are constantly the victim in you're interpreting yourself as the victim in all the bad things that are happening in your life, and as a consequence, you are perpetuating more bad things to happen in your life and how people treat you, et cetera. So I think it's certainly not a productive way to be thinking about things.
Do you share the concern of men today that are worried about their job as a provider because of how fast the world is changing. And for those men who feel like they don't have options because they can't give up the paycheck that they have today, but they want to get something else going on the side. They want the side hustle because they feel like if things go bad here, it's my responsibility to fix it for me, my girlfriend, my wife, my family, to have a way forward on that. What would your advice to that guy be? Because he's saying basically, I mean, I don't have time. I got this job. I got the relationship. How am I supposed to go through the process of having the backup plan so that I have options?
Sure. Yeah, let's get tactical here. Arnold Schwarzenegger famously said, "Well, sleep faster. If you need 8 hours, right? It's like you're going to have to figure out how to create some time here, and that might mean having a conversation with your partner and your kids. That look, I'm going to be going through a period of growth here. Ultimately, these are the reasons why I think this is important. Do we agree that these are important? And do we also agree that these are worthwhile sacrifices in order to achieve that thing?" So I think there's some kind of pragmatic questions that not only are necessary, but potentially useful and valuable so that you have a support system around you as you're making these sacrifices, right? And I think that's critically important. And I think how you need to be spending that time, you can get pretty tactical with it. I think specifically to the comment of how fast things are changing and moving, I think it'd be wise to be experimenting with on a daily basis in that time, artificial intelligence and the tools, around it, Gen AI, and how there are opportunities to do your existing job maybe more efficiently to benefit a little bit more time for you to invest or look at other paths. But what AI has also done, again, getting pretty tactical here, it's dramatically shortened the time frame and what you need to actually test new ideas, right? So inside our company, for example, where historically, in order to try a new product in the market, if there was let's just say an application or something, that would take, months and months, and you're engaging a tech team. If you're outsourcing it, 6 figures to get an MVP out there in the market to ultimately learn, confront the market, and the market will tell you kind of whether it's a viable opportunity or not. Typically, some kind of iteration has to happen at that point. With AI, you can do that in a week. We'll have conversations and turn an idea into a product that we're actually trying to get in front of prospective customers within a week, literally. And less than $50 or something for.
Let's walk through that, because how can someone go through the process in a week using AI and $50 or $100 and go through and validate a business idea? Because a lot of people have ideas for businesses. They talk about them, but they don't know what steps to take to make that happen. So what would your framework be to use that week and artificial intelligence and a small amount of money to test out an idea?
Yeah, love it. So first and foremost, I agree. Ideas are kind of a dime a dozen. Ideas are useful, but it's a starting point. And what I would encourage anyone to do is certainly you're trying in those early stages. This is coming from all of our pre-seed investing, and we created a pre-seed early stage startup company or program in Chicago, which these companies have raised a little over $200 million at this point. So I say that to say we've had some reps in seeing what works in this early stage. What we have advised companies to do, and certainly what we do now especially, is you want to identify what of those ideas that you have real staying power, right? And I think in order to identify an idea that has real staying power and you can make a meaningful business around, I think first and foremost, you want to identify a product that people actually want and will pay for. Now that seems intuitive, but it's not when it is intuitive. It's harder to actually achieve. A lot of people realize until they've actually tried this and invested some money and realized they've created a service or a product that no one actually wants. Or not enough people want. So I think there are ways of testing that specific question, and then I'll get into how exactly you do that. But the second question that I think is important, and probably important to try and start to answer early on, is how is this solution going to be, by an order of magnitude, better than alternative options out there, right? So differentiation in a way that the customers actually care about, because the world is noisy right now, and you have to be able to stand out in people's busy lives as a product and solution worth investigating and ultimately engaging with, right? So the first question, do people actually want to pay for this? There are very easy ways now using a Replit or any number of platforms, vibe coding platforms that are out there, to take an idea for an application or a solution and create a new website, landing page, put that out there, maybe put some ad dollars behind it to get some cold audience, and just learn. Are people signing up? Are they signing up for, whether it's a free offering, a free trial, or a paid trial, which is ultimately where you want to get to? You're going to learn a lot from that experience. Are people not resonating with the value proposition? Can you make simple tweaks? That whole loop could happen. I mean, if that was all you were focusing on, it could happen in a day or two. But if you're doing it, kind of moonlighting on top of a job, it might happen it might take a little bit longer. In that process, you're also starting to identify what are what's a differentiated positioning of this product relative to other alternatives out there, and is that having an impact on people's willingness to pay? Again, you can set these up internally. We set up very clear and explicit experiments. Ultimately, what's the hypothesis we're testing? What are the success metrics we're using to determine whether or not that hypothesis was true or proven incorrect? And then, do we scale it up or ultimately kill it and go on to the next idea? Those are the two, I think, just natural motions that anyone out there can run, and run it in a way that was never this accessible before. I mean, it's truly an incredible time to be able to do that. The last and final question, I think, would diverge depending on if you're trying to go the venture path, or if you're trying to just build a business that you own and you're bootstrapping it. The former, the VC path, it really is important that you're going after a big market. So you really have to do bottoms up market sizing. Is this market growing? Is the urgency of the problem that you're solving increasing? Or if you're bootstrapping it, I think it's more about the kind of unit economics, the profitability of it. So can you deliver the differentiated solution that people want and will pay for in a way where you have a healthy margin and can actually make some money here? Because you're not trying to do this side project just to be a project, presumably, right?
Does the idea have to be differentiated? Why is it important for it to be differentiated?
Because of the last question. If it's not differentiated, if it's commoditized, competition erodes profit. And profit is what you're after here, presumably. Again, if you want a side project, take a side project. But if we're talking about building a business that can ultimately provide for you and your family, the business needs to generate capital that you can actually pull from it, right, and use. If you're in a highly competitive market where there's a lot of products, where customers have a struggle to identify what the difference is between these products, then you're just competing on price. And by competing on price, you just start eroding profits naturally. I mean, it's like a gravitational pull because your expense basis is the same and your profits, or what you're charging for the services or product you're providing, is continuing to go down. So the profit ends up being negligible, or you lose money, like a lot of businesses in the United States. So having a differentiated solution helps you stand out and helps you not compete on price, but compete in some other way.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people out there thinking about starting their own business, they think their idea is gold.
Mm.
Man, if I just had the funding behind this to go and bring this to the market, it'd be a no-brainer for people. Yeah. They would do it. They put the idea up on the pedestal, and they don't think at all about the execution of getting people to pay money for this. So how do you advise people to think about testing? Can you get someone to pay you for the service and also pay you a profit margin on the service that you're doing before they dump in much of their savings or go and try to raise money from a firm like yours or your previous one to go and do this?
Yeah. It's the first step, right? It's move very, very fast to actually trying to sell the product or service. And again, you are going to learn so much from that process. And, years ago, how, I think people generally thought about discovery, and certainly how I thought about discovery, was having a lot of like customer discovery conversations where you're having conversations with people in your network to talk about this incredible service that you're convinced people are going to want to buy and sell. And I think that can be a useful process. I have found that a faster and much more pragmatic process is just going out and trying to sell it. Because you're going to discover realities and truths about the product and solution when you are asking someone to pay for it that you won't discover in a casual conversation where someone's like, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I agree."
It's the difference of, would you buy this from me if I had it? And do you want to buy this from me right now? I've got it.
That's exactly right. And a seemingly small difference between those two things, but a world of difference of what is being asked and what you're going to learn from it.
Yeah. Give me an example of that you've seen in your career, doing discovery versus just going out and selling it, or doing discovery first and then going back to the same people and trying to sell it, and they were less than interested.
Yeah. I mean, even very recently, we had a product that we wanted to test in the market where, there is very obviously a growing demographic of people who are doing gig work. Okay. People who are doing side hustle type of work. And we've been in the business of helping people increase their earnings, right? So, and typically that's been not just doing gig work, it's been helping people change career paths entirely. So we're thinking, okay, there's this growing market of folks. We can't find any really, valuable solutions out there in the marketplace that are, helping these people learn how to, do gig work and do it profitably. Seems like it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's tons of precedent of people buying similar types of products. We were getting a lot of kind of qualitative interest, and yes, I'm interested in it. We did exactly the process I just described, put a landing page up there, and no one bought, right? No one bought this particular thing. Now, there's lessons learned, and we'll do some little tweaks to try and find what is the most valuable way of serving that demographic. But it's a perfect example of like everybody just intuitively understood kind of the value proposition and the market need for it. But you're putting it out there in the market, and the truth says something different.
I'll be a little vulnerable here myself on this point. I invested in a company, and based off of discovery alone, we invested more to make a significant inventory purchase, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the discovery was, I would use it. This is a no-brainer. Like, everyone's going to use this just based off of what the product is. Bring in all the inventory, none of it sold. None of it sold. Not profitably. We could move it, but not profitably.
Oh, you could sell it.
We could move it, but we had to compete on price. Yeah. And you're so right about that there wasn't enough differentiation that was there. But if we remove discovery, for someone who's thinking about, I want to start a business, and they're using this framework, I want to test it out quickly. And instead of just asking people, what's the fastest path for me to go to say, no, this is ready for sale right now, or I'm pre-selling this right now. Sure. You would advise that over just going and talking to a lot of people and saying, hey, would you buy this from me?
100%. Now, to be very clear, I would not encourage anyone to do anything dishonestly, but I think there are, and I have the advantage of seeing this in so many different ways across a lot of different reps, both my own and other people. So I know that there are ways of really accelerating the path to the truth if people will pay for this. But I also get, entrepreneurs or aspirational entrepreneurs who are listening to this thinking, well, I don't have the product that I would even be selling. There are ways that you can arrive at least very close to that willingness to pay. And that might be a pre-sale, right? Or something along those lines. But get as close to the money as you can to really find out the truth about the product.
Let's draw a straight line here for people as we think about app ideas. Everybody's got an idea for an app. Like, man, if I just had $500,000 to put into this. My Uber driver, the last podcast that I was flying out to go and do was telling me, man, like, I'm just trying to raise money for this app. As soon as I get that, like, I'm guaranteed to make millions of dollars. And I'm like chuckling in the backseat. It's like 4 a.m. I'm just kind of like, dude, I mean, I hope you get lucky.
I wish it was that easy. I wish, yeah.
Okay, so if I'm someone who's got the idea for an app, I got $500 to put into this in ChatGPT and Replit. What are you telling me to do to go out and validate this idea and to determine whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea as fast as possible and as cheap as possible?
First, ideally, you'd be able to identify a strong kind of intellectual partner, at least. I mean, that maybe could eventually be a co-founder or partner, but it doesn't even have to be that serious. But someone that at least allows you to keep some kind of like intellectual honesty throughout the process, because you will be having to fight some kind of natural biases throughout the experience. So I would just recommend that. Then I would sit down and write out what the concept is, what the value proposition is. I wouldn't over kind of analyze this. You know, you can do some desk research, if you will, just to get clear on what that ultimately is. But I think it's important that you get clear on what your value proposition is, what the hypothesis of the test is, what has to happen in order for you to truly be convinced that there is a market out there of people that you do not know who, if they saw this offering, they would fork over cash and time to purchase that thing. That could be, that could be 25 purchases or something in the first week. You know, you want to set a specific kind of benchmark. Again, because things will happen throughout your test that will be a slippery slope and encourage you to kind of keep on going. But I think hyper-discipline is important here. You're trying to identify you can do a lot of different things. You're trying to identify the best thing that you can do. So it would be to design what that looks like, okay? If that involves an application in this case, probably involves some type of website or the actual application. Actually, let's stop there for a second. We could go the path of it's a functional application that is required or something else. What's the product?
Yeah, so let's just say the product is going to be an app for fitness.
Okay.
Go back to your roots on this one here. I got an app. I'm going to help people. I'm going to be their personal trainer virtually and get them cut, six-pack, diet, all of that taken care of inside the app.
I love it. Okay, that's a good example and helpful kind of orientation here. So I would try first not to build the actual application. I would go the pre-sale route, and I would be trying to identify, is there a need in the marketplace that is clearly not being served such that people would pre-sign up for this, application? And you can make it risk-free and provide yourself kind of an out by doing, some kind of refunds or automatic money back if some benchmark isn't hit. You can be transparent with the folks that you're driving to the page. But the focus would be on creating that landing page, the value propositions associated with it, et cetera. And then publishing that, I would do that on Replit, easy tool for any non-technical person to use. Publish that. I would probably put some paid advertising behind it using Meta or straightforward platform like that. Throw some traffic at it and just start analyzing, am I getting signups or not? And to the extent that you could get people to provide some feedback, whether that was kind of friendly people in your network or ideally people that are coming to the landing page, that'd be ideal. And just keep making iterations until you do start to unlock, people are signing up and paying for this.
Yeah. Do you think that friends and family are a good arbiter of whether or not your idea is good?
No, I shouldn't even have said that. Because no, I think generally it can be a waste of time. You want to get as close to the customer as possible. Now, if your friends and family are the customer, they're a fantastic source. I think the best source that you can have is if you are customer zero. Like if you are the customer that you aim to serve, there is a lot that you can get away with in the process that I've been encouraging people to do that aren't required as heavily because you so deeply empathize with the customer that you're doing this for.
What about the people that are in like professional services today? They're doing a job like recruiting. They want to build this optionality and say, hey, I already know the business model is a good one because I'm doing it today. I do half the process. I'm missing the sales, the accounting, and the overhead. That's pretty much what I'm missing in this. That would be the natural solution for me to go out on my own and go make this happen. How would you advise someone who has that job today to validate whether or not it's a good idea for them to step out and go do the same thing, whether it's differentiated or not?
Yeah, this is a good example. So in the test that I described, it would probably pass the first test. there are people out there that would pay for this service. I mean, by definition, they're doing it professionally already just for another company. It, at least on the surface, it wouldn't pass the second test, right? Where like, how is it differentiated? How is it going to stand out in the market? How are you going to compete in a way that just isn't on price? And then as a consequence of that, it probably wouldn't pass the third test either. So to me, that'd be a perfect example of, although, certainly you could go that path and maybe you can make it work. But I think how you ultimately make it work is by really answering those other questions with high fidelity. So you have to kind of find your way to differentiation and competitive positioning. Otherwise, again, you're leaving a comfortable job with a paycheck, doing what you're talking about doing over here. You're just asking for more headaches, less certainty, less stability by going that path and doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. And we touched on it earlier, but for the guy who's like, dude, I'm a plumber. My company charges $10,000 to go and install this. I can do it for $2,500. I'm already doing that on the weekends right now as a side hustle. Why wouldn't that be a good idea for me to go and just compete on price?
Great question. So you could compete on price. It presumably is getting a little tactical, but like that person solves the second question because they've differentiated on price in a way that their competitors, the company that they worked for prior, can't necessarily compete on price because this person has less overhead, et cetera, right? So long as those things are true. So is it price is a great place to compete on so long as it's a durable price advantage.
Sure.
Right? So in that case, I think it would be.
And by durable, you're talking about, can this thing scale to be bigger than me?
Precisely. But maybe for some people, and this person in particular, maybe it doesn't need to be bigger than him or her, or maybe a couple people. And to the extent that they can continue offering that service at a price to where, the competitors can't, there's probably a meaningful business there. To the extent that they can't, I think it's very important that we all look at like the sober reality of small businesses in the US, where vast majority of them do not make money. I mean, end up losing money. And the people who own those businesses, I think, don't quote me on this, but the average like take home between $50,000 and $70,000 for a small business owner in the United States, and they're probably working 80, 90 hours, right? That is partly a consequence of just kind of pushing your way into the reality that we're talking about that I think can be avoided with some thought and intentionality.
There's a lot of men who I've talked to who are extremely concerned about AI right now. I'm talking about salespeople in jobs that work for huge companies, Fortune 100 companies, and they come into a role and they're new to it. They're learning. They know they can do sales. And as they go through this process, they're like, I just found out that ChatGPT's voice mode can do my job better than I can do my job. If my company finds out that it can do my job better than I can do my job, what staying power do I have right now as someone who's in this? Gee, I haven't been doing much with AI. I should be doing more with it. There's a certain sense of the concepts we've been talking about today of having agency of oneself and this idea of fragility in the face of AI and the way that's coming, that no one can really predict what's going to happen to those people. I'm curious your overall thoughts on this age of AI that's coming and how men should be preparing for that. And we talked a little bit today about, they should be playing around with some of these tools, but I'm going to dig down into the specifics with you. If you're a man today who's in that role, sales role, huge company, making good money, but now realizing like, oh shit, like I'm good at my job, but this thing is better than me at my job. How should I be positioning right now based off of that?
I have a phrase that I think applies everywhere, in particular here, but you should accelerate the path to the truth and don't pay a toll for the detour. What I mean by that is like the world is moving in a direction, and you don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want to be like the truth is going to happen. You want to be prepared for it and leverage it ultimately. And we are undergoing a platform shift for sure. So things are going to change, and we might not love how all of that change, ultimately unfolds, but within every obstacle lies an opportunity to improve our position. And I think that is how people should be thinking about this particularly. Individuals in that space, I'd be thinking about your job and just kind of workforce generally as jobs that treated humans or aspects of your job that treat you like a robot will eventually be done by a robot. It's just kind of the time scale that we're talking about. So I would think about your job as kind of a compilation of tasks and workflows. There are elements in this sales leader job every day where AI is going to be able to do better than he or she could ultimately. I would see that not as a bad thing, but as an amplifier and kind of an augmentation tool for them to be able to do the unique aspects of their job that uniquely require a human to actually create value. And there's a lot of those still. As someone who plays around with these tools on a daily basis and is constantly blown away by its capability and is a tech optimist, there is still a lot to be desired from this technology and will be for some time. So the aspects of this sales leader's jobs that require a lot of kind of dynamic context and unstructured decision making and convening different people and stakeholders together in order to create value for the organization, I think there's going to be a place, a pretty durable place for humans to fulfill that role, and that's where I would be doubling down.
How long is that human's role in sales safe from AI?
Good question. I certainly don't have the answer to that. I think AGI, depending on your definition of it, starts to threaten aspects of that. But it's really hard for me to imagine. I see robots walking around on the street before I see AI fully taking advantage of what or being able to fully replace what I just described. Um, so I see it as a long ways from now. I think you'd be safe to be focusing on those elements of your job, getting better at those elements, and moving up the capability spectrum, if you will, in terms of how you're perceived as creating value for the organization within your company. And I would be experimenting with these tools, how I've thought about mastery of things like this, or even just like picking up new tools.
Right. Let's dig into mastery on
Sure.
that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I want to go through and getting back into the mindset here of, okay, there's men who are driven, men who are thinking about, I want to achieve excellence in every area of life, my fitness, my health, my business, my relationships, just being a good human being. You've already achieved mastery in a lot of areas of life. They would look at you on the business front and say, dude, he's done it. They can't see it under the suit, but I know from a fitness standpoint, from a health standpoint, the mastery is there. Men want to know, how do they also go about achieving mastery? Are there shortcuts to achieving mastery? So you've alluded to it, but as you think about achieving mastery in different areas of life, let's start high level. Do you start with all of it at once, or do you pick one to go achieve, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah. I don't think there are shortcuts to achieve mastery. I think there are ways of making mastery less painful and exhausting. And I think one is just like pursuing things that you genuinely have a passion in and get rewarded by, because the actual destination can be not only so prolonged, but you can really lack a feedback loop on the way there. And I think that's critically important. So I would say that. The other thing, I for one, don't think you can. I think it would be a rare exception to be able to be a master in a lot of different domains, or to build mastery in a lot of different domains at the same time, because of the amount of commitment and immersion that is required to achieve mastery. The things that you've alluded to already came from very specific periods of my life that when I say I was immersed in that thing, I mean, I was all day. I in the fitness part, I mean, I devoured every textbook, biology book, anatomy book you could get your hands on, to the point where I had to join a PhD lab just to get my hands around the science and be taking biopsies from people's leg and, really immersed. I'm listening to every single podcast you could think of. And, similarly with business, I mean, I go all out when I'm trying to pursue mastery. I
It
think that
sounds like
can
you're talking about the opposite of balance.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, balance has never been the pursuit. Um, for me, I mean, it all ultimately rolls up into I want to maximize my experience of the world, my time here. And for me, that implies a certain amount of extremes. If you want to call undulating between different extremes as balance, like, sure, I'm balanced. But it has not been to try and kind of artificially create mediocrity between a lot of different things that I'm focusing on.
Yeah. For men that are driven, that say they want big stuff, should balance even be on their mind?
I think what they want and what they have to do to get there should be proportional. So
Mm,
to the extent that what they want is extraordinary and far beyond what the average people or sacrifices can make to achieve, I think then the sacrifices and commitment that are required to achieve those goals are going to be in proportion to those goals, right?
yeah.
So I think if those goals are, more average and kind of more reasonable, if you will, then the sacrifices and commitment required to achieve it can also be more reasonable.
But if you talk to most people, they say they've got these big dreams and these goals and these aspirations. What's the disconnect there for you? Because most people are not achieving the big things that they say that they want.
I think it goes back to some of the things with extreme ownership too. It's like it's easier, right? It's easy to have big goals. I mean, it costs me nothing to have a big goal, right? In fact, it would almost cost me something to not have big goals because I'm just perpetually inundated with these incredible lives of everyone on social media and all these things that people are accomplishing. So big goals are everywhere. The sacrifices required to achieve those goals are what you don't see and what is not everywhere, right? Um, an example. So one of the prior to VC backed business, one of the first businesses I had, I was trying to raise some angel capital for, and it was a prominent investor, technology investor, and it was the first time I had ever even pursued a startup that required us building technology. And this investor said, what's the tech roadmap? What's the data infrastructure? How does that work? Again, zero experience, anything tech related or data, et cetera. Now, I could have just said that to him and been like, look, I have no experience doing that. I can't provide you what you're asking for. Or I could just go figure it out. And so that was, I spent the next, week or so literally immersed in everything I could find on technology roadmaps, data infrastructure. It was over Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. I missed some parties. I was waking up at 4 a.m. to do it. I think I missed New Year's that year and ended up delivering, it was like a 75-page data infrastructure technology roadmap, which of course, changed and evolved over time. But the point is that one, I closed that investment. And I did all of that not knowing for sure, of course, that it was actually going to be having meaningful impact. But I closed that investment, and I remember to this day that investor used that 75-page document at an all hands at his large company, and it was like this is what commitment looks like. This is what details look like, and forever, independent of how that business turned out or not, which was fine, but he's a mentor and a believer in me forever because he knows that it's always just a matter of time before I find my path forward because of how I approach the things that we're talking about here. So my goals were ambitious. They were extraordinary. The sacrifices I required to make them were also extraordinary. But the blowback and, disappointment that was felt by people around me, I mean, that was real at the time. It was visceral at the time, but I was willing to make that sacrifice. A lot of people aren't.
Yeah. For the guy who says, you're just more motivated than me. If I was as motivated as you were, I would have accomplished the things that you've accomplished too.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you about that. I honestly, for me, these things are pretty, they're not easy, but they're simple. What I, what I think I just laid out, at least for my mind, it's logical, right? And it feels to be a reasonable mapping of reality that if I want to achieve something that a very few number of people do, I might have to do things that a very few number of people do. And then what are the things that are in that category that increase the probability of me achieving that goal? Okay. Am I willing to do that? That? Yes, no, yes, no. That's the kind of, equation that's happening in my mind on a daily basis. But I also get for a lot of people that that's not thing. I would encourage some people to maybe just recalibrate the goals to be proportional to what they actually want to experience on a daily basis on the way to get there.
Is it a desire issue? Would you challenge the desire of the man who says, I want this, but isn't willing to make the obvious sacrifices? Or is there ignorance involved of not knowing what should be sacrificed to achieve said goal?
Good. It's a really good question. Perceptively, it seems like, yeah, there could be a desire question. I only point to that because, you tend to have people, there are a lot of success stories where people have had life experiences that have created a desire to, and even in some cases, run away from the experiences that they've had. And that's been enough motivation to pursue these really ambitious goals. So you could argue that desire is a factor for sure. Now, how do you create that desire? How do you, manufacture that desire to the extent that you don't just have it intrinsically or it hasn't come from life experiences? That I don't know, other than I guess some tactical things that there's all sorts of things like visualization exercises and really trying to imagine what your ideal life looks like and feels like and describing it with specificity. I've done all of those things.
Did you find that those work
Good.
for you?
I think it has helped. It has helped, but in a fleeting way. It hasn't been like particularly durable. I think what has helped the most is when it's kind of like an identity drive. There's a real deep rooted desire in one being the person that is capable of living that life, and importantly, that the path I pursue on the way to that thing is equally fulfilling and purposeful, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's been particularly important because it gives me a positive feedback loop every day on the way to achieve whatever the thing is I'm trying to achieve. Because I have to admit, the big goals that I set, this isn't for everyone, almost they kind of have less to do with the actual goal and more to do with the person I want to become in pursuit of that goal and the life I want to live in pursuit of that goal. Because you're going to spend 99% of that time in pursuit of what it is that you've identified, not an actual, like, the realization of that goal.
Interesting. Let's apply that to business
Yeah.
and to fitness. So I want to be in top 1% shape.
Okay.
I also want to build a business that changes the world with side effects of a lifestyle that comes along with that. You assert I'm going to spend the majority of my time pursuing that.
Yep.
And that's where the growth is happening. That's where the enjoyment is coming from, the journey.
Yeah. That's the ideal situation. That's how you should set it up. That's how I've set it up. So in both of your specific instances, I'd be encouraging you to, for the professional one, to be identifying the people that both increase the probability of that happening and that make the journey on the way there fulfilling and enjoyable. And yes, will there be challenges? Of course, but they're the type of people that you want to go through those challenges with, right? So you're enjoying the journey there. On the fitness side, it would be focusing on the type of activity or ways of developing fitness that you enjoy and feel good about, right? So it's like these probably very intuitive things that maybe are obvious to a lot of people. But maybe it's just the execution of actually doing what we just described. But for me, it's that straightforward.
Yeah. It certainly opens up this idea of the disconnect between, well, I say I want that business, but God, that sounds like a really terrible journey to go on. It's really
Sure.
to go through and build that. But then do I really want it? Or am I just hopeful of the final destination?
Yeah. I think to the extent that it's the latter, I think the probability of success goes down markedly, to where it's not about the journey. It is, I just want that end thing. Again, unless you manufacture the journey to be something that you can enjoy on the path there. Again, I think it's possible, but I think the probability of you achieving that goal have lessened markedly.
It's so interesting to me because I think about some of the folks who have approached me over the years in the context of their day job versus me going out and building my own businesses. And they they look at almost the symptoms. I won't even call them the end results, but the symptoms of what I enjoy doing, which is the building portion of it. And they see when I get back out of balance into I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm around my kids when they're young. It's like, man, how do you do that? And you think, well, I really I like working 14, 15 hours a day.
Same.
Like,
Same.
and you hear that from a lot of really high performers of it's so not about the destination, but I'm enjoying what I do. And people look at that and they say, God, you just enjoy the journey. Like you like working that hard. I don't like working that hard. I like watching football. I'm a huge football fan. I'd rather do that on the weekends than go and build that. Is it just simple enough to say to that person, well, then you don't want what you say you want then?
Yeah, to the extent that saying what they want is not consistent with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's that straightforward. I think that's just the truth of what you've just laid out. And I think that's the truth of a lot of people out there. Now, again, I don't think all is lost, though. I think it's just recalibrating what it is that you truly want, okay, in terms of what that outcome is. But just as importantly, and maybe more importantly, what is the life that you want to experience on the path there? And now let's just look objectively at those things. Is the life that you're describing of what you want on a daily basis on the way there, do we think that that results in a sufficient probability of achieving the thing? If the answer to that is no, maybe we actually don't care about this thing that we think is the actual destination we're driving towards. Maybe it's the experience on the way there that we actually want. And now let's just get realistic with what that's going to result in.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that better. Because I think that the pursuit of mastery, we talk about it in terms of just let's go achieve mastery, but it's the pursuit of mastery. It kind of goes to those founding documents for America, the pursuit of happiness.
100%,
You know,
100%.
it's hard. You have to work for it.
Yep.
So let's break down. You mentioned a little bit earlier, but I want to do this in a more clear manner here. The operating system to pursue mastery. And I want to use the context of I want to achieve mastery in business.
Okay.
So, what would my operating system look like? If I want to achieve mastery in business, where would I start and what things would I be doing?
At first, I would probably sharpen the business is an enormously broad category. I think achieving mastery in business as a whole would be a challenging thing, or at least a hard thing to orient around pragmatically about how are you allocating your time. So it'd be starting with kind of sharpening that tip of the spear. Then ideally, I'd be using, again, pragmatically, I'd be using time boxing in terms of like the pursuit of mastery in business ultimately is going to be a factor of the experiences that I'm having. And those experiences I'm having on the path there are going to be determined by how I'm allocating my time in the interim, right? Okay, so how are we allocating our time on a weekly basis? It would probably go the path of, and it, for me, has always kind of gone the path of consumption, application, just a kind of a constant loop where we want to be taking in a lot of the kind of foundational knowledge and understanding from greats and learn from, the infinite history that has preceded us. And so learn as much as we can there. Some of that's going to be passive. Some of that you're going to take and absorb as quickly as you can is creating that application loop. So trying to put the things that you're learning into action right away, right? And the useful things. Now, ideally, and case for entrepreneurs, but I guess anyone who has a work, to the extent that what they're pursuing in terms of mastery is aligned with what they do every day, I would be incorporating that application period into useful things of my everyday, right? So we talked about AI. You'd be trying to identify or apply AI in your actual workflow, not just like separate hobbies. Why I say that is because I think you capturing utility from the effort as quickly as possible starts to create kind of a natural feedback loop, which I think is useful because, again, the achievement of the goal, if the goal is kind of the abstract uh, vibe of mastery, it's going to be a long ways away. So it's very helpful to have kind of a motivating forcing mechanism on the path there. So that's just how I'd be thinking about it. And really, if you were to look at my schedule, it effectively is applying that strategy, and I'm just consuming constantly.
Yeah. How do you know when to stop? Because the pursuit of
Mhm.
mastery, in some senses, never ends. And you've mentioned that you can go after one thing at a time. So when do I know it's time to shift to that next thing?
Yeah, I think when you know, at least that's been the case for me. I mean, for me, it's basically very clearly diminishing marginal returns per unit of time I'm investing in it. That's probably been the kind of equation that happens in my mind. In some cases, to make that less abstract, there's been a particular goal or something that I want to achieve. So yeah, I'm obsessed with pickleball at the moment. And I want to achieve a north of 4.5 duper, which is just like a rating. You can like that. That's a very nice like tangible benchmark to get to, and once I get to, I can start to coast. For things that are less kind of clearly defined like that, you know, fitness on the other end of the spectrum. For me, it was very much to the diminishing margin returns piece, and just like I wasn't getting as fulfilled by it as I was, and I think that's an okay kind of compass to use. Business for me just is feels like this kind of infinite or seemingly infinite dimension. So I don't know the answer to that one yet.
Yeah. But I think you can really tell when someone like thoroughly enjoys the process. But it sounds like you're saying it's time to shift when you aren't garnering that joy from the fulfillment of continuing to improve on top of the diminishing returns
Yeah,
that come from that too.
way better articulated. Again, everything rolls up for me is like how I'm experiencing the world. Like how am I experiencing my time here? Is this consistent with how I want to experience it? So I'm looking for rich experiences, invigorating experiences, stimulating ones, and generally becomes clear when you're not feeling that anymore.
Yeah. So there's this classical advice that's out there that people say pursue something you're passionate about that goes along with this because they say if you enjoy what you do, doesn't feel like work, then the pursuit of that thing you're going to enjoy always going after that. Here's why I struggle with that in the business side because people will say, I like working with people, so I'm going to start a recruiting company. And let's just build off of that. They start the recruiting company, but if they want to grow something that also is meaningful to them, essentially they can't be the one doing the recruiting. And they find themselves doing administrative and finance and building a business and hiring people and the human resources. And that disconnect happens from the thing that they chose that they wanted to pursue mastery in and build a business around that would also be tied to their income. But now their role has shifted to like, well, I didn't want to sign up to be the admin.
Sure. Yeah.
That's basically what I have become is the admin. To build a business that scales, do you have to fall in love with the administrative side of it? Or is there room to love the aspect of what you're doing?
Yeah, good question. Look, I think this is actually quite common, especially with technical founders and startups, right, who love software engineering, love building technology and applications. As their company scales, all of a sudden they have the role of the CEO or the COO, which is a very, very different role from being the lead software engineer, right? Now, I think what you can learn from those experiences is that for some people, they learn to love the new job and role, and it's a new way of challenging them and achieving mastery. For some, they realize they don't like that role and they can go back to the other role. So I think it depends, and depends on the person and the context and the partners that you have ultimately. But I wouldn't let it prevent you from pursuing the path, thinking that you have to preemptively understand every aspect of mastery or role that you might have and your willingness or desire to fulfill it.
Yeah. And you know when to walk away and go back to what you're doing before
Totally.
versus that too.
And if you
Yeah.
build a successful company, you got a lot of options.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be. That's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
If you have a company that is demanding you to scale and you have a growing set of customers that are wanting more of your product, trust trust that you'll be able to figure that out when you get there.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to get there.
Do you think people have to be smart to build a successful business?
I think you have to be resourceful. You have to be efficacious and pragmatic to build a successful business. I think the mix or formula that different people have in doing that can depend on the business as well as the individual. It could come from really, really hard work that makes up for some, deficits maybe in other areas. But I think, to some extent, it requires intelligence, hard work, resourcefulness. Would be some of the things that I think you need to be optimizing.
Big words there: efficacious, pragmatic. Break those down for me. I don't know what those two words mean.
I don't believe you, but yeah, my answer maybe would even be combining those two things. There's some qualities that you get when you work with people that have been entrepreneurs for a long time, and efficacious and pragmatic tend to be characteristics that you find because they've found through hard-earned lessons that all that really matters is, were you effective at doing whatever it is that you're saying you want to do? And like there's a kind of a hyper efficiency with, for every unit of time, I have all these things that we could do and potentially do. This is something that has to happen. I have a finite amount of time to make it happen. What's the most efficient way to make that thing happen? Whether that's dealing with customers or a hiring plan or dealing with a turnaround situation. There's a level of, all that matters is what works and what works quickly. And that's basically what I'm saying. Like the faster you can get to that type of place, the higher likelihood of success. In the beginning of people's journey, especially when they've done it, it's one of their first times kind of pursuing entrepreneurship. There can be a lot of wasted effort, right? A lot of unnecessary fluff that you think is important, rightfully so, but actually isn't important.
I'm so busy, but we didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's like confusing activity for progress. And then when you really start getting into it, and this happens to even, really strong professionals, you really start to develop a muscle for a willingness to like let some fires burn. Like the reality is that, again, if you're growing a company at any kind of meaningful scale, business is like profitable problem solving. I mean, it is just like there's just challenges and problems everywhere. You have to get really good at knowing, like, okay, of all of the problems that are going on, these are the ones, or this is the one I'm going to focus on today.
Yeah.
So it's pragmatic.
Give me a last word to these men. They're providers. They're worried about the future. They want to achieve excellence. They think they know what they want in life, but they also feel like they're pulled in a lot of different directions. They've got a lot going on, but they want to have options and they want to be in control of their own lives. Your last words to those men.
We're on the precipice of a very, very exciting time. That a technology that is going to make that reality more accessible to more men and more women, for that matter, who are juggling so many different priorities. I would encourage you to lean in and leverage that technology to the furthest extent you and it is capable, to identify what those paths are. And once you have, lean in, don't be scared to commit. Certainly, communicate effectively with the other people in your life to ensure that you have support going down that path. But you have one life. And if, pursuing mastery and excellence and being in control of your own destiny is important, I think it's worthwhile to make some sacrifices to go down that path.